One of football's mysteries of recent times is how Belgium's golden generation failed consistently at major international tournaments over a decade-long period while sitting atop of Coca-Cola FIFA rankings year after year. This dry period included 3 FIFA World Cup appearances, 2 Euros tournaments, and 2 Nations League campaigns. And in all of them, bar the 2018 World Cup in Russia, it seemed as though Belgium's golden generation, led by Captain Eden Hazard, accompanied by world-class talents in Kevin De Bruyne, Thibaut Courtois, Romelu Lukaku, Vincent Kompany, Dries Mertens, and the likes, were built only for qualifiers and friendly matches, as every time the stakes were higher at major tournaments, these stars somehow forgot how to shine. But of course, the excuses always did pour in. Head coach Roberto Martinez was usually the ones getting all the stick for his apparent tactical deficiencies. Well, the man is not entirely blameless when you consider how after spending very big in the summer transfer window of 2015, he almost led Everton to relegation, having picked the team up in 6th position only 2 years ago. You could say he is not the man you would entrust your golden generation with. Now back to Belgium and their golden generation. Roberto Martinez definitely had his flaws, but there was only little he could do, as Belgium's real problems were deep-rooted in a cheating scandal from way back 2014. Yup, a scandal that involved goalkeeper Thibaut Courtois and midfielder Kevin De Bruyne destabilized the Red Devils' dressing room for a decade, and this mess even created petty conflicts amongst the playing body in camp and eventually blew up at the world stage in Qatar 2022. Let's get into the story. Recall the Red Devils' last 2 abysmal international tournament showings, where they crashed out of the 2022 FIFA World Cup at only the group stages and a year later, failed to make the Nations League finals after losing to a Netherlands team that was in transition. Surely you do. But there is this particular incident that happened, but everyone seemed to have taken it lightly. Right after getting knocked out of the Nations League at the semi-final stage by the Netherlands, star midfielder Kevin De Bruyne made matters more complicated with his bizarre post-match comments, saying that the media expected too much from Belgium, who, in his opinion, were nothing more than just a small nation. De Bruyne made these comments after he was quizzed as to whether Belgium's golden generation had failed. The current Manchester City shared the same sentiments when they got kicked out of the World Cup in Qatar 2 years ago. De Bruyne's comments came as a shock to the global football community, as many had picked genuine interest in Belgium's rise in international football. Some said his comments were misguided, while others believed his comments were a direct reflection of the exact mentality inside the Belgian national team camp. However, with this story that I'm going to tell you shortly about Belgium's golden generation, you might as well in the end agree with De Bruyne. I mean, if a team that truly had world-class players in every position on the field could still be in their feelings over mistakes 2 players made when they were only boys, then certainly we did expect too much from Belgium's golden generation after all. Let me tell you how Belgium's golden generation were doomed to fail even before they made their first appearance at a major international tournament. The year is 2014, and Kevin De Bruyne's girlfriend at the time, Caroline Linen, had just dropped a bomb that she had cheated with goalkeeper Thibaut Courtois from a couple of years before, as payback for what she called De Bruyne's own infidelity. Apparently, De Bruyne had come clean with Caroline some time back about how he cheated with the best friend of Caroline's. You know, honesty is key for every relationship, and especially for one that was 3 years long, right? This was actually De Bruyne's thinking, but the reality was very far from that. In fact, this little gesture of his proved he did not know the cunning little serpent he was living with all those years, because not only did Caroline break things off with him after this reveal, even though she continued to play along, but she also hatched a master plan to shatter the playmaker's heart into pieces. With plans of revenge already on her mind, Caroline then set her holiday destination to Spain, under the pretext that she was going to visit a friend. De Bruyne, who had become a little more lenient with his girlfriend, did not hesitate to allow Caroline go, even though they were both stationed in Germany at the time. Reminder, De Bruyne was on loan with Werder Bremen from Chelsea at the time, and it was in Spain that Caroline set her grand plan to motion. Upon reaching Spain, Caroline visited Thibaut Courtois, who, as a young goalie from Genk, had also just moved to Atletico Madrid on loan from Chelsea. Far from home and in a new country where he literally did not know anyone, Courtois needed company, and that meant he was just the perfect candidate for the evil Caroline had set her heart to do. And more good news for Caroline, De Bruyne and Courtois were good friends at the time, so the two shared intimate times together, and of course, they hooked up like the usual sneaky links go. Then after, as strategically masterminded by Caroline, once she was through with her mission in Spain, she went back to De Bruyne in Germany like nothing had happened. Now to the messy part. Having successfully concealed the cheating scandal from De Bruyne for close to 2 years, it was in 2014, a World Cup year, that Caroline decided to go public with the affair. Courtois and De Bruyne had both been called up to the Belgium national team ahead of the World Cup in Brazil, and then this bomb actually dropped onto the news that the goalkeeper had betrayed the brotherhood. And as you would imagine, there is no betrayal in sports as unforgivable as a teammate banging your girlfriend behind your back. This is actually worse than that teammate snatching the girl completely, to be honest. In the aftermath of this announcement, great was the enmity this scandal created between Courtois and De Bruyne that the two simply could no longer stand each other. Calling the two to camp was a sure way to break the team's disciplinary code, and so, in an attempt to deal with the issue as amicably sportsmen would, the Belgium national team, led by manager Mark Wilmots, considered suspending Courtois indefinitely. But the guilt of denying his country one of the top shot stoppers in their posts weighed too heavy on De Bruyne's shoulders, who vouched for Courtois to be pardoned. Courtois was pardoned and he made the final squad for the World Cup, but that would eventually prove to be a very bad call. You see, the whole team needed time to process the whole incident because they were still in shock and denial, and a suspension for Courtois would have provided that processing time. But having Courtois right away, the team definitely had factions who genuinely felt he also deserved some sympathy too, and that he was also played by Caroline and not De Bruyne alone. There are always two sides to a story, aren't there? This was the sentiment shared by a fraction of the team that sympathized with the goalkeeper, and this disagreement was enough to divide the team into friends of De Bruyne versus sympathizers of Courtois. But while still in their feelings, the World Cup tournament soon came calling. Football lovers who saw a team of exciting talents on paper tipped Belgium as one of the competition's dark horses, but the civil war in camp cast a shadow of darkness on the team's performances on the pitch. Let me just say, they were indeed dark, but not really the horses. But all the same, a quarter-final finish in Brazil, losing only marginally to tournament favorites. Argentina wasn't too bad for a young, inexperienced team. The future was bright, everyone thought. But it was the same story 2 years later in France, as a disappointing Euros campaign saw Belgium crash out at the quarter-final stage after shockingly losing to Wales. Makes you wonder that if the disruptive consequences of teammates' conflicts were oblivious to them in the past, then they certainly were clear now for De Bruyne, Courtois, and the whole team to see and learn from. But no, that did not happen. Factions in the team were still not on good talking terms, and indiscipline continued to plague the team. While at it, mention just one team that achieved so much on the field despite significant off-field issues. Mention just one, and I shall prove to you that discipline in football is only but a conspiracy theory. Coming back to Caroline, you just think she must have definitely known where and how to hit De Bruyne hard with her payback. Recounting her one-night affair with Courtois, Caroline shared with the media that Courtois gave her one night she had sorely missed for all her 3 years with De Bruyne. She added, "With Thibaut, I could have good conversations, and he also cooked nicely for me. Such a thing Kevin never did." And then we clicked. cunning little serpent. Back to the Civil War. The disjointed Belgian Red Devils gave it another go at the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia. After convincingly winning all 3 group stage games, their old demons seemed to have caught up with them as they went down 2 goals to Japan in the second half of the round 16 tie. But head coach Roberto Martinez proved he had some tricks up his sleeves as his late changes sparked a Belgium comeback to win the game 3-2 in the dying minutes. They went on to beat Brazil in the quarterfinal, breaking their quarterfinal curse, but were made to settle for a third-place finish after losing 1-0 to eventual winners, France, in the semi-final. Obviously, knowing all that we know, Russia 2018 was a huge success for Belgium, and it was no surprise to see thousands back home flooded on the streets of Brussels to give their bronze medalists a hero's welcome. This was a monumental day in Belgian football history, as they matched their best-ever finish at the most prestigious football tournament, the FIFA World Cup. But the players knew they could have gone all the way, if not for petty misunderstandings. Nonetheless, this golden generation had one more World Cup campaign left in them, and they vowed to go for it when the time arrived. However, before that was the European Championships that was co-hosted by multiple nations, including Germany, Spain, England, and 8 other countries. And here, Belgium. And it was at this tournament that Belgium's golden generation neared their end. You see, for a golden generation, you need your star players to be playing consistently at the highest level, something that Belgium always had. But before the Euros in 2020, Captain Eden Hazard, who was their influential game changer, was struggling with his own problems that ranged from persistent ankle injuries to losing his starting spot at his new club Real Madrid. Hazard eventually had to drop out of the final 23-man squad within a week to the commencement of the tournament. Then there was also goalkeeper Courtois, who had also just signed for Madrid and was now struggling to rediscover his Chelsea form. Not to talk of midfielder De Bruyne, who was battling with his own set of injuries that has marred his playing career at Manchester City almost every season. The reality of the issue was the not-so-reliable striker, Romelu Lukaku, who was with Inter, was the only one in top form ahead of that particular tournament, as the other top players were either retired or not in top shape, with the absence of their inspirational captain, Eden Hazard, to control the dressing room, and of course, win them big games. The Belgian Red Devils' depleted squad failed to build on the successful World Cup campaign in Russia, bowing out to Italy in yet another quarter-final exit in the Euros. This was not good enough for a team that won bronze at the World Cup only 4 years ago. There were injuries, all right, but so was the case in literally every team, not to even mention COVID. But rightly so, it was after this disappointing campaign that reality started dawning on everyone, that perhaps Belgium's golden era was truly over, and that it was time to build a new team with a young core. But stubbornly, they were the last ones to notice, and they would be given their harshest reality check ever in Qatar 4 years later. In Qatar, Belgium's golden generation would bow out of the FIFA World Cup in the most humiliating fashion, as they failed to make it out of a group that included Canada, Morocco, and a declining Croatia team. And sadly for them, this was also where their off-field issues blew up in their faces real big. Apparently, the Courtois sympathizers versus friends of De Bruyne's civil war had over the years birthed a disturbing phenomenon in camps where players were at conflict with one another. And this furthered on to the new generation of players that joined camp, where some players were reportedly getting picked over others simply by association in camp. Normally, young new players would stay patient and wait for their opportunities. But here, new players like Leandro Trossard was beefing the out-of-form captain, Eden Hazard, because he thought he belonged to the right side of the faction. Courtois and Hazard have been great friends during their time at Chelsea, so it was easy for Hazard, the captain, to forgive Courtois for his actions in the De Bruyne cheating scandal. That is not to suggest Hazard was less of a friend to De Bruyne in any way, because in fact, Hazard's playful spirit not only meant he was friends with everyone, but also that he did not really see the whole issue as much of a big deal. Or even if it were, too much time had elapsed for the camp to be divided over such an issue. But others obviously disagreed, and Trossard was not even the only one. Strikers Michy Batshuayi and Romelu Lukaku were at each other's throats for their own reasons, not so much alienated from the Courtois de Bruyne saga. And you just tell me, how do you win a whole international tournament with all these off-field distractions? Perhaps Belgium's golden generation were looking to defy natural law there by simply holding grudges for that long while expecting to do great things on the football field. Or maybe they were simply playing the games for fun because it was their duty to play football after all. Whatever the case, seeing their current status today in the global football pyramid, I'm sure the players would one day look back at their time with regrets and go like, damn, we really failed a whole nation. Golden generations are meant to change the fortunes of a nation for the history books. Spain's golden generation won the Euros back-to-back in 2008 and 2012, and then sealed it with a World Cup trophy in 2010. Same with Germany's golden generation, who won the 2014 World Cup as the first European nation on South American soil. But what did Belgium's golden generation win? Nothing. And just like how most great men and empires fell in history, a woman was at the center of it all. And in this case, Caroline Leinders, call her Lola Montez if you want, was that woman